going to be a lot of comments and questions, but first, this may be my last meeting as president, so I'd like to do a little reflection and recognition before we start the meeting. For reflection purposes, I want to remember that both Bing and Carol Browns, good neighbors, good contributors, passed away this year. Terry Johnson, major pothole filler, former volunteer fire department. I think he was actually fire chief for a while. Passed away this past year. Nadine Stacy, I think, passed away this past year. And not a bad beat from what Lucy Keith, I think, was a little over 14 months ago, but she was known. She's the one who started the auxiliary. So those are people that I think we all, they were major contributors, and we should all remember that. But as we go forward, I'd like to talk about contributors. So everybody who has served on the board, please stand. In the past or right now, please stand. Okay. Anybody who's filled potholes, please stand. Anybody who's done, stand up, stand up. Anybody who's done Firewise, please stand up. Anybody who's gone out and mown lawns around here or tried to kill weeds, stand up. Any other, these are contributors. These are people who have helped make the neighborhood what it is today. And I, at least, really appreciate them, and I think all of you should as well. They're not the criticizers, they're the contributors. And that's what makes Beaver valuable. Thank you all.
Our Coke machine brought in $1,586 last year gross.
I hope you have a part of that.
Well, I understand the Beaver Valley Auxiliary's been disbanded, so I'll take that money.
Whoa! Okay, so I know there are questions, comments, and you'll see on the, if you have a copy of the agenda, that there will be a good time, although it's towards the end, but it's after election of officers. I'd like to get through most of our presentation, and then we'll open it up to those comments and questions. Establishment of a quorum. We want to maintain civility through this. If the meeting gets too wild, someone up there may say, we've had enough, and they'll call for adjournment. Won't be me. But we have 8 out of 9. One of our newly elected board members, Steve North, is not here. I would like for each board member to stand up, introduce themselves, and tell what unit you're from, or how long you've been on the board. Ladies first.
My name is Ann Stopa. I'm from Unit 2. I've lived here for 20 years. I've been on the board for 8 or 9 years.
Anna?
Ian Newman, I've been here since 2006. I live in Unit 2, and I've been on the board already once.
Yeah?
Jim Wiggert, I've been here 4 years, since 1964.
That was a good year.
It's been a long 2 years.
2016.
And I've been on the board for 6 months.
Roger?
Good morning, or is it afternoon? I'm Roger Kremeyer. I've been on the, here in Beaver Valley since 2002. I previously served as a president. And let's see, I'm over in Unit 3, and I think that's about all I can say about me.
Gary?
I'm Gary LeBute. We bought here in 2017, and this is my second year on the board. Unit 3.
My name's Mark Hallett. We bought here in 2012, and Skeets got me in the board not long after we moved here. I live next door to Skeets, if you know where he lives. And that's about it.
My name is Will Santora. I've been here for 7 years and been on the board for 6.
Axel. My wife and I moved here 2012. I've been on the board for 7 years, president for part of that, vice president for most of it. I've coordinated 3 road paving projects and a few signs you may see around and some repairs to some of the play courts. But that's about it. I didn't ask to be president, but somehow I stepped into it. So there you have it. Minutes of the last meeting. Anybody willing to review them? There were some copies up here. I don't know if all of you have seen them. But this is the last annual meeting, which was 14 months ago. We've been looking forward to having another one. If no one wants to read them and everybody's satisfied with them, we can have a motion. to
I move.
accept them.
We accept them as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll pass the minutes.
Mark, point of order.
Yes, sir.
I've served on a couple of boards in the past, and I don't remember anybody or any board waiting a year to review the minutes from an annual meeting. I think they should be reviewed, approved, and amended at the next regular board meeting when there's a quorum present. If you wait a year, that doesn't do any good. I hope someone on the board might make a motion.
Well, I will make a motion, but I've always thought that too, because how do you know, you remember a year later what happened a year ago?
If somebody will second it, then we can have a discussion.
So, well, I mean, that's just
What's your
discussion.
motion?
I don't really have a motion yet, I'm just discussing it as
Well,
well.
we should have a motion on the floor in a second and then discuss it.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second it.
So we have discussion,
Okay,
yeah.
everybody in favor of that?
Well, I just have a question, is there a reason it's done that way? That's what I don't know.
Is there a
It's
reason it's
just always
done?
been done that way,
Oh.
and we've just continued to do it that way. There's really no good reason for it.
Well, then I would make a motion that we don't do it that way anymore, and that we approve it at the next monthly meeting. That's just my motion.
For some clarification, and I could be wrong, please, Robert's rules usually speak to, like, at the next meeting, those minutes are reviewed and approved. We are discussing an annual meeting, so that meeting happens every year. So therefore, the next meeting that we would be holding would be in 2021.
Okay.
Just the clarification of why we do that.
And it could be that way.
I have no problem either way, but that's the reason why that is. That's why we look at the monthly meetings.
Okay, but we don't follow Roger's rules even closely. Well, no, not if you, I've read plenty of pages of them, we don't come close to them. So I don't know why we pick and choose that, if no one wants it.
Why don't we do both? Why don't we review them at the next meeting, see if there's any corrections, and then go ahead and do the annual approval?
Well, you can see how closely we reviewed them today. But I'd be happy with that. I think that is appropriate.
Yeah.
Make sure that we didn't miss something while it's still fresh in our mind. I don't have a problem.
I don't need it, I can go with it.
I'll make a motion that we do the annual review as well as the next month's reading of the minutes for corrections.
Now, please keep in mind, we don't have a secretary right now. So we're working on this. I think Will's trying to cover with some help, but, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
See how easy
Motion
that was?
passes. Thank you, Pat. Annual treasurer's report. Ann, do you want to come up here?
I can say. There were the income statements, profit and loss statement, and our other balance sheet in the back. So just to review it, we have $111,732.31 in the bank. We have $16,254 outstanding. Of that, $8,177 is past due more than a year. 43 people still owe for this current year. That equals $8,367. Sure you're all dying to know, we've spent to date, not last year, total, on the attorney for the water dispute, $18,459.62. And you're not gonna see that number reflected on your profit and loss statement. That's why I gave you a little, it says 17,518, but it's actually when you add in the past years, so that's a total. If anyone has any questions? Yes.
On the attorney that we hired for collections, we spent almost 14,000. How much have we recovered?
So if you'll look up at the top of that, it says legal fees recovery, $2,263 so far.
We spent 14,000 to recover 3,000.
There are still some that are
So the answer is yes.
no, there are still some that are ongoing, so we haven't been able to recover. They will pay the attorney
But
fees.
then you're going to increase the legal bill again.
No.
It's in the process, it's in motion, and there are dates that we have to follow legally before we can move to the next step with those people. So we will get the majority of it back. I mean, what is your suggestion, that we just let people not pay?
Very definitely, we don't sue neighbors. I think this is a nasty policy that we have.
What would you suggest we do to get their money?
We meet with the neighbors and we discuss what their hardship is.
We've done that.
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have.
No,
Yes.
to spend $14,000 to get 3 is ludicrous.
And
We're
how much
already
have we
in the
recouped
negative.
total? We recouped
This
more than
month, we're in the
3,000.
negative.
Yeah, we've recouped more than that, but in the legal fees, we're still working on some of them. But to just, John, what would be the incentive for you to pay your dues
Well,
if we
what's
did
my
nothing?
incentive when we're in the negative?
What would be your incentive to pay
We
your
lost
dues?
$6,000.
We haven't lost it.
Negative.
I believe, and I could be wrong, but you're misunderstanding that. We've collected several thousands of dollars total so far in legal fees, or in past dues. Now, it has cost some money to do that, but I think in the tens of thousands have been recouped over the past year, not 3,000. And when they pay their dues, they also pay the legal fee. So we're not losing money in this, and I personally don't think we should just leave it up to people to pay when they want.
Well, I just go by the statement. The statement says we lost money.
Well, that's why I'm trying to explain that that's not how it really
1 and
is.
1 equals 2. We lost money.
Well, I'm not gonna argue with them, just telling you how it works.
Okay.
I have a question too. If you guys have collected and spent 14,000, and she says they collected 3, where in the books does it show how much you're going for, and where's the proof that you got it done? There should be in numbers accounting. There's gotta be a traceability of the numbers. And if they're not out here, you just say, well, we've collected a lot more than that. Well, that's a good statement, but it's not accurate. So we need numbers. It should be documented, and the book should be open for everybody to see, not have to guess.
Okay, so it's illegal for us to show you who owes money. I can get the numbers of what we've collected totally.
Sure.
But what that is broken down into is just legal fees, just not dues, just what it has cost us to recoup that money.
And I've got a little bit to add here. You don't get to see the aging summary because it mentions names, and we don't share that with members. Board members do get to see it. But effectively, when I got on the board, I think we were owed $30,000 in past dues. Okay? Right now, if you look at the aging summary for stuff that's over 90 days, which would be before this most recent invoicing that we did for this year, it's down to 8,000. So if you want to know whether we've collected, yeah, we've collected. And everybody in this room, we may have some people who flip-flop both ways. The reality, we were pressured by the community at large. Why are we getting billed and these people aren't paying? They are paying now, and we're after it. So you can raise all the questions you want. The reality is volunteers and legal have been after it. So it's easy to come in afterwards, start raising questions that are crap.
Would you explain?
It doesn't show on there. There's no paperwork that shows.
I
So
understand.
it isn't crap.
That's why I just
Okay,
explained
don't
it
use
to you,
words
John.
like crap, okay?
That's why I
It isn't
just
crap.
explained.
We want our money.
Yes, sir.
I mentioned that I've been on the board for 6 years. I sat in the chair out there with you and asked the same questions of the board when I first came here. I was one of the folks that said, wait a second.
I can't hear you.
I was saying, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, when I first bought in here, I sat in the chairs that you're sitting in right now and I asked the same questions that you did. At that time, fully 1/3 of the lots that were in this community were more than 1 year past due. It took several years and quite a bit of effort on part of board members that are here now and those that are not here today to start a whole collection process. Someone mentioned, do we try to talk to our neighbors about hardships? That was the first thing. We sent out letters acknowledging that they're past due and telling them, if you have a hardship and cannot pay, first step is to ask us or come to us and tell us what your hardship is and work out a payment plan. Many of our neighbors did just that and then became up to date. There were some that refused to answer any of our letters. The community said, why are we running continuously at a deficit? Why are you paying and other people can't or aren't? So the next step was, what are our options? Our options were to engage an attorney after we've taken steps to try to collect it in a friendly, neighborly way, to take the next legal steps that we can to encourage people to pay up on their loans. We do not have 1/3 of the lots past due more than 1 year now, as the President just mentioned. I think you make a very good point about looking at 1 year of what's in the legal today, but you would have to be able to look at it from when we began the process. We literally, and I can't give you an exact number, it's well over $40,000 that's been collected, with maybe less than $15,000 spent. Anything that's been collected, it's collected with the legal fees attached. So those are recovered. So I hope that helps. I have the same concerns you do.
Thank you, Will, for the explanation. The thing is, though, we don't have that information that says you've collected 40. That's just hearsay. And it isn't crap.
I'm sorry,
Sorry for using the word crap.
what's the process that the attorney takes once we engage the attorney?
And you may be able to explain it better once the attorneys send them a letter.
Attorneys
Saying-
send them a letter and ask, well, first they've got a lien attached to their home because your dues are a deed restriction, they're not an option. Yes.
You need a microphone up there, we can't hear you.
Want me to clean it off? 6 feet.
So you have a deed restriction, so your dues are not an option. We don't have to go to court to make you pay them. They're automatically due, so we place a lien on your home. Then the next thing the attorney does is he contacts them and says, hey, look, you're past due, they've made attempts to, and it's not just one letter, it's several letters. There's 3 different letters that go out. We try talking to them. I've knocked on doors. Is there a problem? Can you tell me why you're not paying it? We do make an effort to pay it, or to collect it before we send it over. So then the attorneys start sending them letters saying, if you don't pay, we are going to start foreclosure process on your house. Then we have to give them like 6, I can get you the exact numbers, dates, whatever, but it's like 6 months before we can actually start that foreclosure process. If a house is foreclosed on, then they have like another, I think it's another 6 months that it has to sit there, that they can pay. So they have about a year to come back and do that. And the next meeting, I will have all those numbers broke down for you. I'll get the process, the exact amount of money that we sent to the attorney and how much we've collected. I cannot tell you specific names. I can give you numbers.
I was just wondering, could there be like a line item put on this or an outstanding number, just the number?
Is what's outstanding.
Not detail, but the number so that it's more
Yes.
in balance.
So we can do that.
About receivable and outstanding on that.
No problem. So while we're at it, I guess some of you aren't happy with my treasury skills. So we are going to go ahead and hire somebody to do a complete audit of our books. As soon as that is done, I will hand everything over and help with the transition to a bookkeeper. The only name that I've gotten is Carol Quigley in Payson, and I spoke with her. There's $60 an hour, so she's looking at about $20,000 to $30,000 a year to do our books. Right now, I do the bulk of them. I can pick up the mail, write the checks, pay the bills, do as much as I can, do all the annual mailings. I'm free. So then I give it to a bookkeeper, she puts it into our accounting software, then we have a CPA. So there's 3 people who have their hands in the books, none of us have the same duties, but we will pass it on to her. Last year we spent $2,000 in bookkeeping. Next year we'll spend 20 to 30. It is a lot, it's $60 an hour. You guys don't realize how much time is spent. They will also have to answer for all the realtors, send out all of the disclosure packets, and get back to them, right?
I got a question. On the, you're talking about getting a paid secretary.
Paid
Attorney.
teacher, paid bookkeeper.
Okay, are you gonna go out and get an 80% vote for that?
No, don't need to.
Okay. How many attorneys does the association have right now?
One.
One.
We have an attorney and a paralegal that we use. We try to
Okay,
use
so
the
basically,
paralegal.
you've got two. Which one is going after the past due money?
We are using the paralegal for that. He's half the price of the attorney.
Okay, because you stated on the last page that there were 17,000 for one attorney, and then another 17 or 18,000 for another attorney. When did you hire the paralegal to start collecting the past dues?
So we have a past due, or collections is written out on there, and then there's a water dispute. It's the same company, it's the same lawyer, and he has a paralegal. So when we engage Tony Combs, the attorney, but we can use his paralegal, and he consults with the attorney, and he's half the price. We're trying to keep the costs down to a minimum. So there
basically,
isn't
you've
two,
got one attorney.
one attorney and one
And you're using
paralegal.
his paralegal.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
that makes sense.
If somebody wants to step up to the plate and
Well,
do the books,
we're right
they
now,
can do
according
that.
to the last documentation that I saw, we're 30,000, or 30,000 in debt to the water company for an
No.
attorney fee.
18,000
18,000, okay, and the other one was the 17 for the paralegal.
collections. No, for the
Okay.
collections. We are, for the attorney and the paralegal, they bill us one bill from Tony Cullen Law, and that legal bill has been 18,000 for the water company, not for collections.
Okay, well, this year is the first time I see two separate legal fees.
I believe it's always been that way. I've always had her divide it out between water and legal, or the water issue and the collections,
Okay.
so that we don't confuse them. But if somebody wants to step up and do the books for the association, I mean, I'm happy to show you what to do, show you where we're at as soon
We
as
have a
we
gentleman
can.
back here that just said he'd be willing to do it.
Berto, you willing to do it?
What, me?
You raise your hand.
Kidding me?
Yeah. No, I mean, if nobody's willing to do it, we have no choice but to hire somebody. The books have to be done, so that's,
Do you get bids on hiring somebody, or is
yes.
also you took bids and that's the cheapest?
That's the first person that I've contacted, and she is the cheapest. I talked to, I called 4 times Shelley Hale Accounting in town. It needs to be someone local, because they have to pick up the mail daily, or weekly, or somewhere close to that. So she won't, I haven't gotten her to call me back. So if anybody has a number, a name, a person that they use, they wanna recommend, please, let me know.
Have you ever looked into a management company? Homeowners management company?
I will
You don't
pass
wanna
it.
go there.
There
Until
you go.
recently, I was on 2 HOA boards, one here, one in the valley. And we actually had to change management companies, but I think the base fee for the management company for 50 properties, just 50, was over $800 a month. That's not including their expenses, their mail outs or anything like that. They're not cheap.
No, I know we had one at the place I was at, we had 115 units. And, well, we found they took a big load off the board.
Oh,
to turn it over to
And
them.
this
Let them
board,
take care of all the legal, they did all the mailings, they did all the collections.
well, you gotta remember, Patrick, I think our total revenues that come in every year, if everybody pays, about 45,000?
No, it's more than that, it's about
50?
60.
60,000. So you start talking about a management company that's gonna take, a thou a month, and then you start talking about a road.
Well, when
We've
she's
gone
talking
cheap.
about 60,000 for an accountant,
No,
I'm just thinking
not 60,000,
20.
about 20,000
20,000 for a year,
for a year, yeah.
all right?
At $60 an hour, because when they go pick up our mail, they'll charge us a minimum of 15 minutes, they charge every 15 minutes. So it's $15 just to look in our mailbox. So,
Okay.
I drive an hour to get the mail, but
as far as you want.
I don't get
Okay.
paid.
In light of the fact that we're going to be reviewing the minutes at the next meeting, I would like to, at your disposal, Ann, if anybody has some questions, that can't be, easily answered in this group meeting, could they contact you, Ann? Okay, I would say let's work it offline, make your suggestions, and we can come back to our next meeting and try and solve any problems that still exist.
Good idea. We're moving. Okay, the next one. This one will get a few comments, but again, I'm gonna ask for, you wait for member comments, and I'll tell you where the board is essentially with the building dispute that we've been in the middle of. After some of the letters, rumors, surveys, other things that have gone on recently, I forwarded that information to our attorney. And I said, we really need to respond to the community. So our attorneys wrote a 3-page letter that came back to us that was for publication to the community, along with a lot of the documentation, including letters that have gone to opposing counsel, letter written by Mike Davron when the third bay was being built, basically with his conditions for what it would take, and a lot of the documentation. All of that has been posted by Will on BV Estates 1. How many of you have looked at that, any of it? Good. How many of you would like to look at it? I have a limited number of copies with me of only a few of the pages because I was doing this on my printer at home. But I think I've maybe made 20 that I can hand out. You may have to share them. So if you raise your hands, I'll try to distribute. It's still online, but not everybody has great access. So I'm gonna make the round.
It's all posted on the Beaver Valley.
The website.
I have a question for you while he's doing that.
Yeah.
As
The
quickly
people
as
who
possible,
don't pay and
make
refuse to
comments
pay,
because it
do
may
they
help
still
fill in a few
use
holes.
the properties here, or are they allowed to use the properties here?
Technically, we could keep them off, but that would be really hard to do.
They don't get
I
to
mean,
vote.
if they refuse to pay, shouldn't we have the right to refuse them to
We do.
enjoy this property?
The remedy is.
We
is
do.
The remedy is foreclosure.
But it's really hard to,
Oh, here, Mark.
it's really hard to police that. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you police that?
Well, basically, it has to go to foreclosure and then the sheriff has
No,
to.
what he's saying is, if people don't pay their dues, can we keep them from enjoying Beaver Valley? And the answer is, the law says yes. How are we gonna do that? Who wants to stand up there at the, turn in and say, "Kid, come here"?
I think Robert volunteered.
Oh, yeah, so we could do that, but I don't know how we would police it. So you guys took,
Can I add something to that? The things that, if you don't pay your dues, you're not a member in good standing. You cannot attend this meeting, you cannot vote on any of the things that are a part of the,
no, they can.
you can, they can attend the meeting, but they can't vote.
Have I lost control of this meeting again and back?
Yeah.
I turned my back for 1 minute and you people are out in the parking lot.
It's the green gloves, Mark, I just can't get past them.
I'll take these gloves off if I have to. All right, I'm gonna quickly just hit some of the high points from the attorney for those of you that are here. Basically, this is sent to us, to Beaver Valley, and the attorney says they understand the issue of claim of ownership. and the demand that was made to tear down the building. A lot of you have seen this information. Then there's a recap of how we got here. And if anybody has questions, we never asked to have this building back. But if anybody wants to know how we got this building back, Chief Saddlemeyer's back there, and I think he could explain some of that if he's willing. But first, you're gonna have to ask him. But this this letter basically goes through a little bit of discussion, and this ties into a couple of things. Last November, if you recall, we had no water supply to this building, and we weren't sure how to get water supply back to the building. So in executive session, the board met to talk about what we would do with the attorneys. Two things happened. One, we decided that I would put together an offer to Mr. Armstead to settle everything, move lines, repair things, recoup any charges, the whole thing. That was rejected, but that was one approach. Second approach was we want to get water back to the building. What do? Well, we looked at rental facilities with water delivery. That was expensive. That was going to cost for a couple months a few $1,000s. We also decided in that board meeting, well, what does it take to drill a well? We didn't approve drilling a well. We approved $295 to apply for a well permit. We have that well permit now. We're not planning to drill a well. We weren't planning on it then, but it's funny, once we started that process of application for a well, all of a sudden, Mr. Wigger was able to negotiate a re-hookup of water to the building. That solved the problem short term. Whether anybody wants a well to help either Mr. Armstead, the community, water our grass, that's a later issue. But that's how that happened.
Can I speak?
Sure.
I want to counter that and disagree with that statement. After you guys lost in Scottsdale Court in December of 19 to allow Mike in the building, after being lied to by the board that there was no water under the building, for several meetings, lied right to our face, no water is in this building. He had a restraining order, so he couldn't go in the building. He got permission then to go find the water. He had to revamp all that water out of the footings, and you were told at that time that you had to file it through the ACC, an application to put water in the building just like any other customer, and you were notified. That was the process. You chose not to fill that out. And then on top of that, right after all that, you canceled Beaver Valley Days, and this gal that just started their social, you canceled that. You knew that you had 6 months to put that water in, and you chose not to do it. You canceled those things, and again slandered the water company. I think that's just wrong. And I think it was wrong to do that to a 30-year resident, and I think it was wrong to do it to the people here that wanted Beaver Valley Days, and you were notified how to do that, and you chose not to.
I think we need a correction to your statement. The board did not lie to Mr. Armstead about there not being a water line under here.
I was here at the meeting. Lied right to our face.
Okay, he knew, as everybody knows, there was a water connection out there and that the line ran under the building. Nobody is going to contest that.
What you did, you got a restraining order off, no? So you couldn't go into the building.
Well, as he began to dig under the building.
After he got the court to approve him to do it.
No, he did not get the board approval at that time. That's not correct.
What about the
That's not
Scottsdale,
correct.
the courts in Scottsdale that finally gave him the right to go into the building?
There never was a court in Scottsdale. Jim
I got a letter.
Lumpy, did
No.
I call you and ask you, please come to the fire station and saw cut our concrete all the way across so he can safely find out if he has a pipe here? We don't want somebody getting hurt under the building. And what did he say to you? No, thank you, I'm digging. So we offered to give him a solution that would satisfy it all. It would be safe, he would see if he had a pipe. You don't believe me?
No, because why would you lie in the meeting where I was at? You said there
Jim,
was no
let
water.
Jim talk.
Actually, let me clear it up, because we're both kind of wrong. We had to get a sheriff here because there was a couple people threatening, like somebody's gonna whoop my butt. I thought it was kind of funny that somebody's gonna come whoop my butt. I was asked to sock that land so we could have somebody that was impartial, which I wasn't, to come in and saw cut and try to find the water leak, which isn't good for the foundation. We need to find it anyways. So I came in, I saw cut, jackhammered it out myself. They dug it up, found it.
Wait, not that one, Jimmy. I'm
Right,
talking
that
when he
one.
started digging
was before me.
That, I asked you to come down when he had
You wanted the
that.
salt cut
Yes.
here and out there, but the water was.
Right. But this was before there was a leak. He was just trying to determine if there was a pipe under there.
I was called in after there was already standing water.
Okay,
I got a question.
yes.
When you put the third bay on, you violated the easements and the utility right of ways.
Okay, we didn't put the third bay on, that was
That was
before.
unlawful, that you built over.
Wait.
Did you have that blue state?
So, we didn't do that, the Beaver Valley Fire Department added that right there. And Blue Stake is highly encouraged by Gila County, but it is not, doesn't have to be done. They highly encourage you to do it.
Yeah, but if you'd have done it, you would
But-
have found the water line.
That's something you would need to take up with the old fire department. The HOA didn't do this.
Well, okay.
The old
Speaking-
fire department.
Speaking of the fire department, this building was given to Whispering Pines to Ron Stadler
Correct.
group, illegally. The guy that signed it over was an ex-chairman. It's on the
Yeah, we-
white deed claim.
Sam Winterstein.
Then Ron Stadler, because he had the fire department already, he deeded the building back to the association, which was illegal.
Right.
That should have never came back to the association, because the association didn't give it away. The fire department gave it away. So
Right.
how did you guys
Bring
wind
it,
up
that's Ron.
owning the building?
Ron, can you talk to this?
Well, because there was no fire department here, he had nobody to give it to other than the association.
Let me try to help understand that. The original deed to the Beaver Valley Fire Department had a clause in there that if it ever became a situation where the fire department had no usage of this building anymore, it would revert back to the association. So that's where the original claim comes.
Chief, you wanna come over here and use the mic since you got a mask on? Keep the mic outside your mask, I guess.
The reason he came back was he was violation.
Yeah, and before I turn it over to the chief, I think I gave you a copy of the letter, Greg? Did I? Did you get a copy of the letter? Look at page 4 from Mike Davron. Page 4 from Davron was listing the conditions, all of which were met for building the third bay. Davron owned it, this water company at that time. He listed his conditions. They met all of the inspection requirements. They got all the permitting. Read that letter. Thank you, Chief.
Okay. If you look back in the recorded documents for this property, for
It's right
back
here.
in 1998, when the property that this building is sitting on was donated to the Beaver Valley Fire District for the purpose of building a fire station. There's a stipulation that was added to that deed that says if at any time in the future this building is no longer going to be used as a fire station, the property reverts back to the Beaver Valley Improvement Association.
Right.
So that's what we did. I met the requirements of the stipulation of the original deed to deed this property back to the BVIA that was required in the deed. So that's how it got transferred back to them.
How did somebody that doesn't own it quickly get back to somebody that doesn't own it?
Yeah. And how's the guys on the board sign it over to begin with?
How does that work? Like, in other words, I can go down and I can take out a quick claim deed on your house and give it to my son. I don't own your house, but whoever quick claim this deed over didn't own the building. The county or the fire department owns the building. Somebody who built it owns it.
Can I just make a comment on
Take
that?
somebody out of the crowd and say, hey, you go quick claim this building over.
Understand.
When I signed the quit claim and turned it back over to the
I'm
BVIA.
talking about the one that the ex-fire board had signed.
From a real estate law approach, when you have a quick claim deed, that just says, I don't have any more claim on that property. It does not convey the title. So if you quit claim somebody else's property, that just says I don't have any claim on that property. It doesn't say that you conveyed anything to somebody else.
Well, so then why are they saying that it was quit claimed over here?
Well, because they quit,
It doesn't do any good.
they didn't have any more interest in this building. They're walking away from it.
But then how do you, as the HOA, or we get ownership? We don't own
How
it.
did it come back to us?
He just told me how.
It originated.
Here's the deed that was recorded.
Okay,
It
then
said
what-
it was voted and approved by the membership of the BBIA and was known to the BBFD board at the time. If the BBFD ever ceases to exist or is dissolved, the above described property and improvements and fixtures on it shall revert to ownership of the BBIA.
Wait a minute, now, didn't you just said, did you give 80% to transfer this equipment out here?
It was done
80% of the.
to transfer the fire station?
No, because.
That's not us, that's
No, but
them.
you're giving away, wasn't there equipment involved too?
Hold on, no, let me
And the
explain.
tax write-off for the people that live here?
No, wait,
One thing.
James, listen. This was raw land that in 1998 was deeded to the Beaver Valley Fire Department to start a fire department here. So what they're saying is if this, whatever they put on this land, if it was ever dissolved, it went back to the HOA.
Who said it?
The land, who?
Who said it? Who was the one, what they said?
This was all done by, signed by the members of the board at the time, and it was voted, an 80% vote was taken to give the land away.
And what year was that?
No.
1998.
Okay, just a second, this lady, you're gonna get tired.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me with the rest. I heard that for the fire department to extend the building here, they had to get the agreement from Mike Davern, who was at the time the owner of the water company. So I don't understand why now that the fire department is not here, we don't agree that that part is still the property of the water company.
Because Devron gave them permission to do it.
Permission, it doesn't mean he
Wait,
lost
wait,
the property.
it was never his property though. It was never his property. It was always fire department property. That property was never water company
So
property.
why did they need the agreement of Mike Davern?
I mean, obviously they knew the utility easements were
Jerry,
there.
just stand up.
No,
Well, they did.
that's not what it's about. It's about 20 square feet.
So we're spending all this money on 20
No,
square
no,
feet.
no, no, no.
That's,
Okay, just a couple things I'd like to say. It seems that the confrontation, but I would like to say, when people out here say you or they, it is you or they who were living here when previous boards did that. So it's everybody here who has done this, if they gave it away illegally, whoever lived there at the time was part of it. So to make a confrontation was kind of funny. We're at where we're at today for a reason. Many different opinions in here, and this is exactly why it's important. Because nobody will agree to get off their position, and I say nobody I've seen that has either the water board official position or the board official position. The current board, or the last board, or maybe the current board, the future board will change their mind about it now. I don't know, but you can see here, we could talk about it for hours, and I'm retired, so I got until I die, and I'm good with that. So, as people get enlightened, that what has happened, some partial truth, some, and I think most people speak what they think is the truth, but not everybody knows the truth. I've been asked, well, we go down and look at the documents, it doesn't matter how I read the documents, because no one cares about my opinion either. They just don't. I mean, they don't. I can read it how I read it. That's why it's important. If the two parties want to get off and willing to actually agree reasonably, then I think it could be resolved. Otherwise, we'll make this discussion all day long. But they are we and we are they. Because I've only been here 3 years. Some of you have been here 20 years when this was given away, which you said was done illegally. So now you're bringing it up to a board 20 years, 17, 20 years later, and saying you guys did this. In other words, they're trying to resolve this, what we're trying to do. You're trying to resolve. You're trying to be the only way to do
That
it.
isn't 20 years ago.
Well, how about, okay, 17, 15, whatever it was.
when the building was built, is when this all started. So I know the history, I read it, I discussed it in the text.
I know the history.
Hang on. All right, you remember where we have a section on the agenda, remember the comments? We're gonna move forward.
Never gonna resolve it. Never gonna resolve it.
Probably appropriate right now while the discussion is up.
You got 2 minutes.
Uh, 3 minutes is standard.
They did tell me tonight that I talked once another thing. Somebody want to pass these around. I did write my comments because I wanted to be clear, and I apologize for not being as involved of late. And I think I showed it to a couple of my neighbors and got, idea. There is an error that the legal fees on here are the combined legal fees of both of the getting the dues and of the water company. Okay, so very briefly then, I have some concerns. Last February in 19, I made a motion that we would be, all of us sent a petition to decide if we would let Mike use the building so we had water. That motion was carried. Mike gave his plans that I saw that looked okay to me, and we were never contacted. None of us were contacted to vote whether we wanted to have Mike use the building. And so the sketch was very readable, and I could understand it. And so, anyway, no action was taken. The board took no action on a motion. And to my chagrin and my amazement, they turned around and sued the water company. Now, that to me seems just ridiculous. I had offered to help negotiate some time back. Anyway, and they had no authority to hire a lawyer and to spend our money without our approval, now, I think the bottom line is, I don't think anybody really even cares who owns this building. Does anybody care? I mean, I know Mike Deveron has said that he would open it to a community center, he'll even pay the legal fees.
Did you just say Mike Deveron? I just want to get
She did, that was a mistake. Mike Armstrong does.
So he wants the whole building now? Is that it?
This is my opinion, I don't know that, but I do know that he has said if the building is turned over or whatever, this will be a community center, will be open, he would pay for the utilities and the liability, and have a library and whatever. With his own money, with his own management company. Okay, so anyway, my opinion was, and I should say that my family bought in here in '72, before the 100-year flood, for those of you that didn't read this. We built in '84. My husband was part-time shortly after that, and he's been on the board for 10 years and a president. We know the history. If anyone wants the history, I have it all. So my solutions, I figured, were to cancel the lawsuit, to accept the resignation of the board members that made this decision that was not following the bylaws, to allow the water company to fix the building, fix the water system. What we all need is clear, safe water, okay? And let's quit fighting, please, and, follow a golden rule, and let's enjoy our pristine natural.
He's made a lot of promises to us, and that promise was not, we're not gonna.
This is my opinion. This is my opinion now. I think
We're
that
supposed to change our meter.
we're not gonna argue in between
Thank you,
here.
Mrs. White, I've got to get control.
Thanks, Margaret.
Can I say one thing first before we move on? If this is all true, my letter that I sent out, I sent to every homeowner, because nobody was being informed on anything that, I'm James Clark. What does it tell you? That 92% of the letters I sent out want the board removed. 92%. No, I will. It's all been documented. I've already received it. Then we need 25% according to the state law. If you have 1,000 people, committee or less, any wrongdoings, any member or the entire board can be removed for 25%. Currently, we got 92%. Oh, I know you're.
Oh, no, wait, you don't have 92%.
We have 92% of the
92
ones,
people or
92% of the documents so far. What does that tell you about the board?
3/4 of Unit 2 didn't get the letter.
Okay, whatever. 92%. If I have 120, 120.
That's fine.
No, I don't mean to be making. Only by state law, you have enough to demand that I resign.
All
order.
right, guys, let me just start over
This is
because,
typical.
hold on. Obviously, there's some confusion how we got here. So, when Chief Saddlemeyer ceded this property back, we found out that there was, our land is a B like this, over here in this corner. So the reason we have that letter from Mike Davron wasn't an agreement to build this third bay. It was an agreement between him and the then Beaver Valley Fire Department to deed a little square of land so we wouldn't have a setback issue on that V. At that V, we are 5 feet 2 inches from our property line. So we are completely on our own property. We are not on water company property at all.
We are on their easement.
Hold on. Okay, let me just finish. So, when this happened, the chief had already started to do a variance. He was granted a variance. I went and looked through all the paperwork and saw Mr. Armstead was never contacted as somebody who was close to this building to be given a chance to contest it. I went back to the county. I said, can we do a do-over, because he was never given a chance. So they redid it, they sent it back out to him. We were scheduled January 17th, 19th, something like that last year, to go in front of the Board of Adjustments to get a variance on our setback. That was a Thursday we were supposed to do that. The Friday before, Mr. Armstead walked into the county offices and said, you can't give them a variance because I own that building. I then get a phone call from the county saying, look, we've conferred with the county attorney, we can't determine. Mr. Armstead showed them no documentation, they had all of our documentation, but we can't decide who owns that building. You have to go to a judge and get a judge to tell you who owns it. At that point, we can't, what we were trying to do was get this rezoned from a fire department to a community building, and we couldn't move forward with anything until we determined who owned that. So that is why. We didn't sue him for money, we didn't sue him for damages, we're not suing him. We are in court to try to determine who owns this building. That's it.
Still owe us
That's it.
still owed us
So-
a right to approve it. Still owe the community a right to know what's going on.
The community was kept abreast the whole entire time. They were, okay, well, that's your opinion. I just wanted to clarify, we are not suing, we are not looking for damages, we're not looking for money, we're not looking, we agree when he found his pipe, you have a pipe, yes, you have an easement. Obviously, we let him in there, Roger sat with him, and we didn't make any bones about it. When he started drilling this well over here, and he wanted to see if it would produce water. We opened up the building, we let him hook up to our electric, go for it. We've never done a thing to stop him.
Well, who
Everything is
called
been
the
his
fire
own.
chief on and
Yeah,
said,
it's building.
That he couldn't what?
somebody called the fire chief that came down here and told him he could not drill that well. He went to court, or he went to the county, and they said, no, because you're a utility, you can drill that well.
Fire chief.
Right here.
I didn't call and we
I
didn't
didn't say
call.
you called, somebody called. I'm not
Nobody,
gonna mention
Nobody
Sam's
called.
name, but it could be possible.
nobody called anybody.
Well, bullshit.
Now, listen to me. When I saw the stake in the ground out there where they intended to drill the well, that was before we had the property surveyed to find out exactly where the property corners were. My concern was he was planning to drill a well on the fire district's property without asking, just drilling a hole in the ground. That was the reason why I asked him to wait until we got a proper survey done, a legal survey, to find out exactly where the property lines were. I don't, you can sit there and shake your head, but I know what I did, and that's the way it
I'm
happened.
sure you do know what you did. In the
Nobody
whole
called,
family, but I'm just saying.
nobody called anybody.
Bullshit, you came down and stopped him.
Let's watch our language, please. Non-inflammatory language.
Oh, jeez. Help me, Jesus.
Okay.
You can't stop a guy from drilling a well when he goes to the county and says, no, you can drill that well. You had no right to stop him. But
Yes, sir.
somebody.
Okay, do you have you own property here in Beaver Valley?
Okay.
You have property here in the community?
Yes, I do.
So if somebody came in, if Mike Armstead came into your front yard, drove a stake in the ground, said, drill here, wouldn't you be a little upset or wanna know what's going
I
on?
think I'm gonna get some free water out of that, dude. It's on my property.
Okay, so that's what we were trying to do, is figure out, is he able to drill a well on our property?
Was he able to?
Or was it on his own property?
So when it was surveyed, what was the result?
Kind of a mute
The
point.
the survey showed that where he drilled the well was outside of the fire district's property.
So he was good.
He was good.
So,
However,
Okay, I want to address, one of the comments about the resolution to have an 80% vote to allow Mike to use his third bay. Okay, I think, there was one stipulation that wasn't mentioned, and that was that there was to be a plan by Mike Armstead as to what he was gonna do with the bay. How he was gonna use it, how it would affect the rest of the building. We're not gonna just give a blank check. And there was a tiny sketch came back, which was not sufficient. And we tried to get that clarified, it wasn't ever clarified. And consequently, it died. The resolution to get an 80% vote was not carried through. Now, I've talked.
Who made the decision question? Who made the decision it wasn't sufficient? I saw that schematic, it looked exactly
Well,
fine.
the board is making the decisions, that's who the board is.
There you go.
Yeah, and we have the obligation to represent all of your interests,
But you're not.
to make sure that we have a good understanding, and, I mean, we want to be able to have him use it as planned.
The plan was submitted. We were never informed.
Well, it wasn't sufficient, and so he can resubmit that plan, but let me just, I talked to Mark, and I
We're way
think,
beyond that at this point.
okay, can I make a comment? I'm trying to talk. Okay, I think, and I'd have to approach the board as to whether they would approve to go ahead with what little sketch we got to get an 80% vote to allow him to use the bay.
I don't understand why we need 80% when there's a dispute. If anybody knows.
We'll try and explain it later. Yes?
Yes, I was at the meeting when Ann, that time, when Ed said, in a couple of months, every owner of Beaver Valley will receive a paper asking if they agree for letting Mr. Ister do whatever he has to do. And we never received that letter.
Nope.
So
That's because we never received his plan.
Oh, that's all the work.
If you guys have it, give it to us.
Well,
We've never seen it.
let's do this. Let's get a vote of everybody, and if it's 80% approved, then let's see his plan.
Absolutely.
Hallelujah, that's what we've been saying, but we need
No,
a plan.
let's get the vote of the people first. If you can't get the 80%, why look at the plan?
Well, and people need to know what they're voting on.
People are voting on the fact that we turned this bay over to him, so we got good, clean water.
That was a judge's decision, but Mrs. White, I'll tell you what, I've talked to the lawyers about this, you've made a lot of strong comments, I don't think they're all right, I don't agree with all of them, but I understand your interest. You get a committee together. You draft up what you think would be appropriate to go out to the community for the vote. Bring it to the board, we'll show it to the lawyers, if it's adequate or it requires some corrections, we'll get back to you, we'll go out for the vote. How's that? The only claim that is outstanding out there, and we thought that the unclear or clouded title was a problem, the only claim is by Mr. Armstead. So, if you can get 80% of all lots in agreement,
What's not gonna happen?
That's 80% of everyone that's up to date in their payments and everything.
Correct.
For their lots.
Yes.
But, and how many lots are there? 367?
About 364 lots, I believe.
All right, order. So this gentleman's had his hand up. That would mean you'd have to have about 300 lot approvals, just so you know. Yes, sir. You want to talk over here?
I have one question. I've heard a lot of opinions, but why isn't Mr. Armstead allowed to come to the meeting and speak for himself?
We're not attacking. He used to be invited to a lot of the meetings, and what happened that actually changed that was when he, without permission of the board, had someone tunneling under the building, which could cause structural damage and also someone could get hurt. At that point, we went to the presiding judge, and the judge issued an order that he could not come in here. That's how it happened.
I haven't seen that order.
You can tunnel under buildings if you know construction, you have ways of doing it.
If you do.
Okay.
You can tell them.
If you do.
No problem.
Nobody saw it, they saw it here.
I had suggested to Mike that as a business owner, why doesn't he have a meeting with his water people? And then we could all sit in and have this discussion on it. I said that, we've just done that a few times on it. Nothing's ever happened with it. He could have his own meeting and have people get questions and answers.
Have you ever seen
Where
him?
is he
Have
supposed
you
to
ever
have
seen
this
Mr.
meeting if
Armstead
he
when
can't
he's
have
meeting?
it in this
Yeah.
house?
When you see him here, and for one, he'll sit up there and just shake and scream at him. He doesn't get anything. No shit, I've been there. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I said a cuss word.
This was his.
I was there. I don't care what.
I was too, and I'm a lot younger than you, you have, might have a memory loss.
Oh, really? Oh, come on.
We got a racist! Oh my God!
Just get ordered.
I know you do.
Get ordered.
You want to come up here? You want me to clean it off for you?
No, I just have a question about. I just had a question about the 80% vote is based on his.
The 80% vote is in the bylaws if we were to give property.
Right, so we want to get an 80% vote.
I don't think the drawing enters into it anymore.
Oh, it doesn't.
I don't think it's important.
Because what I recall was if he had a drawing that was done up to all the stuff that he was gonna do.
And a plan.
And a plan that had all been submitted. And then, so say there was an 80% vote and he was able to do that. If he changed one thing, then it'd have to be started all over again.
Potentially, depending on whether it was material or not. So,
Okay, I was just curious.
okay.
How many times you have to make 80% vote?
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
In the documents that you put in the computer, and I kind of went through the whole list of them, it says we're at a point where somebody has already been appointed mediator. Do I understand that correctly?
And I kind of lost control. When did that happen? Oh, about an hour ago.
Who's the mediator?
A mediation date has been set firm between opposing counsel and our counsel, August 7th in Phoenix.
So a lot of the discussion here is going to hinge on what that mediator decides.
And let me explain to you how that will work. We don't actually sit down together with Mr. Armstead and his attorneys. Our attorneys and our board, hopefully all of them can attend. We will be in one room, the mediator will come in, he'll talk to us. He'll go to another room, talk to Mr. Armstead and his attorneys. Very fair. Then, probably do a little thinking, he'll come back to us and say, would this work for you? And if we say, well, if you can do this, this, and this, then he'll step into the other room. So they're willing to do something like this. How do you feel about that? Now, if the whole thing blows up, after about an hour, we walk away. It won't have worked.
Wait, they're giving us free lunch, we need to stay.
Okay, well, we gotta drag it out a little for the free lunch. Anyhow, that's how it will work. And if the mediator can get both teams, both parties, to agree to a reasonable approach, whether it's giving up part of the building or whatever, if everybody agrees to that, then a contract is written, and it's a binding contract from mediation.
The legal fees are going to be astronomical on this. And you don't have, I've been in mediation before.
Can you stand up to the mic? I can't hear you.
Talking about. Okay, here's-
John, can you stand up and go into the mic? I can't hear you.
In mediation, you don't have to wait for a judge. You can have mediation tomorrow if you want. All you gotta do is both parties have to come in and sit down and be reasonable. At the end of that, you can turn it over to your attorney. Your attorney will draft the documents, thereby you avoided another $17,000 in legal. That's how you do it. Don't wait till August 7th. Get in here now, get Mike in here, and let's get this thing resolved and not be spending this money.
Yeah.
Agree?
Yeah, agreed. Do it.
To avoid any further confusion, just so everybody knows, what we have tried to do, because I went to the Perry Mason School of Law, but none of us are legal analysts, lawyers, none of us. So we picked what we thought was a good attorney with water experience, and we have followed their lead, and we continue to do that. I agree with you. I mean, I've done contracts for a living. Mediation is great. If you have parties that can sit down, come to an agreement that's binding, it'd be great. I personally, just personally, don't feel like we can do that at this point with Mr. Armstead, and that's unfortunate, because nobody likes wasting money.
Maybe Roger could tell him how Roger made a real simple letter to him, kind of as a friend, and asked him to fix something, and we got a 3-page, unbelievable, nasty reply back. He doesn't communicate with us, John. I mean, that's the
There you go,
whole
Roger.
problem.
It's starting to feel like an Olympic torch and we're on a marathon.
It's a hot mic, I can tell you that. We've tried formally, informally, we want to get this resolved. You know, nobody likes this confrontation. We don't like holes in the bay, we don't like not being able to use this as a community center. You know, it's just been a very distasteful experience for almost everybody. And we apologize that it's went to this point and for the expense of this. I made some unofficial requests to Mike, and he may not agree with the way I said it, but as Mike, let's do something real simple. You quick claim your deed to this property back to Beaver Valley Improvement Association, and you know, that would remove the claim. Then
Wait,
we
Roger,
have an
Roger.
opportunity.
He not quick claim it back to us. He doesn't own it. Quiet title action, meaning that he gives up his claim to our property. He doesn't own our property.
Well,
Giving up his claim. So it's a quiet title, not a quick claim.
Okay, there's a legal distinction there, but in essence, he's given up his interest. And if that would happen, then we would know that the Beaver Valley Improvement Association had clear title. If we have clear title, then we can go and get a lease approved by 80%, because we now know as a board that we own this building, and we can lease it to him. How can we lease something when we're in dispute? Don't know who really owns that, don't know what the judge is gonna say, we don't know. So how can we go out and make these leases or agreements unless Mike will be agreeable to work with us? We've also made a proposal, okay? We tried, when they found the leak over here, I approached the board and I said, board, we got a leak over here, the leaks don't get better, they get worse, and we don't want to undermine and flush out part of the foundation. So they agreed to let me open the door, bring Mike and his equipment in, cut a big hole, discover that he in fact had a pipe. He didn't know he had a pipe there. And then with that, he was able to determine that he had a pipe and that there was a leak, and that leak was fixed. Okay? So it was stopped for a while, then we didn't have any water, and then later on we were able to reconnect. What I'm trying to say is, we try to have as much dialogue with Mike. I've talked to him repeatedly, and I would like to just get this thing settled. But let's stop this confusion and this trouble we have.
Just another comment. I think that the lawsuit that Beaver Valley has against Mike is a cease and desist, that he's not even allowed on his own water company, which is a little silly. I think things have changed a little bit in that if we may get to the point that what we would really like to do, like James said, is to get rid of the HOA. And then the development company, okay, let me give you a little history here. The development company gave authority to establish the HOA, the association, Beaver Valley Association, okay? And the development company is now the water company. The development company is no longer in existence. The water company has the franchise for the whole shebang and had given authority to the HOA. We don't really necessarily even need an HOA. And we especially don't need a lot of this back and forth. I mean, there's other avenues that can be taken. Things have changed also. Mike, I know, has a possibility of getting a whole set of equipment, which is a water treatment plant that is not being used somewhere else in the state. At this point, I don't know if he's even willing to put millions of dollars of equipment into a lease building. I thought because I knew some of that, I thought the easiest thing would be to be able to turn it over to the water company, let him handle the management of it, and let us have clear, clean, safe water, which is the main thing that we need, and we can still use the building, so who cares who owns it?
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. With that proposal, we'll turn everything, as you would recommend, everything back over to the water company. They now have ownership of all the roads, the maintenance of the roads, they'll take care of all the roads. They'll be all the, they will own the roads. BVI has ownership right now. They will also be responsible for all the legal interface that we have with new buyers and such as that. And so, that's a possibility. Gosh, I don't need a job on the board. But on the other hand, I feel that a lot of people here would like to be represented with a common voice, with their interest at heart, and that they would not have to come up with a lot of money for a lot of dues. I mean, our dues might be a little hard to pay right now, but they're actually quite cheap compared to what?
$11 a month.
$11 a month.
So can we move on?
Roger, I'm gonna take, just 1 second. We're out of control, and we're gonna try and
You want to answer the relative that we have an agreement with the county that
We have no.
We have no agreement. We've been over this.
Okay, I'll clarify a couple things real quick. One, we received a fact sheet yesterday collaboratively from the Arizona Corporation Commission and Department of Environmental Quality. Because there have been statements made, some of them by people in this room, about $38 million that was lost because of the HOA, blah, blah, blah. All of these things. They've answered some of those. And these are rumors that were started by people, spread by part of the supporters for the water company. I support the water company. I just don't want them to take the building illegally. So I only have a few. We will get them posted, but I'm going to pass them around at appropriate spots, and you can look at these. It doesn't come on an ADEQ or ACC heading. Thank you. But you can call them, Mrs. White. I do like to call people.
All the links go back.
I've met with the people there.
I bet. There you go. What's her name? I'm gonna give a couple for the, okay. Anybody else want one?
Here. Thank you.
You know, I'd just like to point out, I think one of the biggest thorns in our side sold his house and moved.
Is what?
Sam Baker. I think he caused more problems in this community than anything. Yeah, he's taking his money and run.
he still has his same shape.
No, he sold it.
No, he sold his house.
Oh, he might.
I know he did.
He has it.
He resigned from the league. He's taking his money to run.
Yeah, we need to vote for
Just keep looking deeper.
Are you reading it?
Yeah.
Okay. How many board members would like to just walk away and quit?
Good. We accept.
Come on up, take my place, I'm ready to go.
These are volunteers.
You're only an
Now,
hour into it, come on up. Yeah. Big man.
not that anybody trusts any paperwork, because this was an email that I sent to Ann before I was president. But I do have a copy of a few of them that was the communication with Steve Sanders, who's in charge of the roads for Gillett County. And it also has the standard that they would expect to take over the roads. So a lot of the rumors started by some of you in this crowd, without doing your research, deal with the roads. The reality is, the only road I had any hope of perhaps being able to straighten out, put the proper ditches and get to the right width was Beaver Flat, extending down from the mailboxes. That one, there might be a chance. Any of our other roads that duck under sycamore trees, swing around pine trees, maybe hit a juniper tree, none of those meet county specs. So any of you who have done all your research, Mrs. White, who would like to see that, come and get it.
You mean the guy that we spent $37,000 to fix the roof didn't do it right? Is that what you're saying?
He passed course.
No, that's not what you're saying.
Anybody else want one of these? So, now we're to that magic point that we all enjoy so much. It's election of officers time. Does anybody want to be president? And if so, take their temperature.
Thank you, sir, for providing.
Can we maybe, John Corella, you want to be president? You want to jump up and become president?
Go ahead, John. Go for it.
Okay, well, we gotta get you elected.
I make a motion that we recruit Mark Bexel to remain the president.
I second that
No, they
motion.
don't want full-time, they don't want full-timers.
We're happy with full-timers.
3/4 of the people on the board, and it's not full-time.
We have a motion. We have a motion.
Okay,
We have a motion to re-elect you as president, Mark.
Yeah.
it's not an honor.
All
All right,
Let me just say this, in behalf of Mark, he's been under some heavy, heavy flack. He talks about monkeys on his back, he's got a whole herd. And he's really worked hard to help this community. It's been very discouraging at times. There's been some really unfair attacks on him. And I won't say that he's perfect, but I know this, he's trying really hard to help the board maneuver through some difficult issues. And then I think he's the man to go to arbitration, wherever and however it happens, and to lead the board in that respect. So that's my opinion of Mark.
thank you. So we got a motion, do we have a second, I think?
Yep, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm not voting. All right, we need a vice president. Do we have a nomination?
Roger.
I nominate Roger. Okay.
I make a motion to nominate Roger as vice president.
Okay, Gary seconded. All in favor? Aye.
I'm not voting.
We need a treasurer. There've been a lot of comments, a lot of negative statements. Ann has, in my opinion, it's only my opinion that I'm speaking from, she's done a great job of trying to take over the treasurer's job from Cindy, who was a CPA who did it previously but resigned from the board. I don't want that job.
I don't want it.
But what I would propose, perhaps with the help of Mr. Corella and his wife, maybe we can get some advice maybe Ann can fill in on an interim basis, if you'll work together, and we can come up with some ideas on how best to save the community money while also doing what's necessary for full transparency, good number crunching and results. Is that something you're willing to do, John? Sylvia?
And I need names of companies to audit our books. I'm not picking them because I'll be accused of picking a friend, so somebody needs to come up with a name. I will get with them, get them everything that they need. As soon as that audit is complete, my hands are off everything. So you guys can all rest assured your money's safe.
Okay. So, I would nominate Ann as interim treasurer until
Until an audit's complete.
an audit
That time
and
it will move.
transfer of responsibility.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We need a secretary. We lost an excellent one. I won't mention names. And you wouldn't recognize him anyhow because he's wearing a mask. A Lone Ranger. But what I would propose is I think Will Santora would do a good job if he can get a little help. And it's not an honor either, but we do need a secretary to put out meeting minutes. And so I would do a motion, if Will is willing to accept, that we nominate him for secretary until he can't stand it anymore.
I second that.
Can't stand it anymore.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay. Member comments. We've had a lot. I honestly can say I welcome the feedback. We're not perfect. I don't like lawsuits. I've worked in the oil industry and the mining business, and doing contracts is a very tricky business, and it involves lawyers. A number of them who are my friends, but they're expensive and it's painful. I would like to get out of this as soon as we can. And I wish Mr. Armstead great success with the water company. We all want good water.
I'd like to just recommend that I'm willing to bring Mike to a meeting if the board is willing to sit down prior to spending all this money in litigation.
Let me talk to the lawyers and also talk to the board. And
So you control the lawyers before.
If
you pay them, you control them.
I think, as I said before, we've tried to follow their guidance. It's taken a long time to get a mediation date, and I agree with you. Okay, thank you, and thank everyone for your help. Yes, ma'am, or miss.
I just have a question. I know that there are many opinions about what it is that everybody is disagreeing about. I have never totally understood, maybe 3 or 4 clear statements about what is the contrasting opinions that one side has, and then there's a difference in the other side, and then we're apparently arguing about that, but I've never clearly understood what the actual issues are that we are trying to mediate.
I'll try to give you my opinion, but I'm sure I'll have some help.
Just look on that.
Essentially, when all of this came about and the building was returned to the HOA, we weren't looking for it, but fire chief did what he was required to do, wherever. So he transferred ownership back a year and 6 months ago almost, something like that.
That was September 18.
Oh, so a little longer ago. Yeah, long time ago. Then we were trying to figure out what to do about it. Originally, the first thing that happened that hit the streets was a lease agreement. And actually, I can say that one of our board members helped Mr. Armstead write up a 50-year lease agreement for the third bay. And that was like, okay, so 50 years, I'm not gonna be around, so that's almost giving it away. So we had to go get some opinions on that. But in the meantime, the conversation changed from leasing the third bay, which was returned, to who owned the building. And that's how the whole fight started. And all we want to do, if we don't own this building, we should stop paying the little bit of taxes we pay on it. And I've got better things to do. I don't like to be out doing road work again. So if the HOA does not in fact own the building, it relieves us of some responsibilities for maintenance and other issues. But we are obliged by the bylaws to defend property, and this became our property, and that's where the fight began. Anybody want to add to that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In order to settle this whole monkey business, what would happen if this building were to be sold and somebody else took over the building and said, okay, I'll lease it to Mike, or so-and-so will lease it to Mike? Have they ever set a price on this building? Have
No,
they ever done that?
No, but again, it's one that we would have to get an 80% approval
Correct.
to get rid of it.
As we go to this 80% approval business, we've owned our property for many, many years, over 20 years. And I'm gonna tell you something. I've never received a letter or anything asking for my approval of anything. Nothing. Nothing. And you're sitting here saying we gotta have 80% approval for this, and we went ahead and did this because we had 80% approval. Where's my letter?
That was done in 1998, so you would not have been a property owner if you've lived here 20 years.
I was too.
Things have been done since then.
Like what? Wait.
No, wait a minute.
What's been
I
done?
think I understand what you're
Done
asking.
since then.
If I could, I think I understand what you're asking, and that's a good question. 80% approval isn't required for everything that we do in terms of running the business or maintaining the property. 80% approval is coming into play because we are basically giving or disposing of the property either as a sale or a long-term lease. CCNR say, and I think you'll agree, you don't want the board to make that decision on your own. Whether I'm sitting at that table or if I'm sitting in these chairs, as a property owner, I want to weigh in on an issue of that magnitude. Okay, whether or not to hire X road company or Y road company, probably not important. But when you're disposing of assets that we all collectively own, I want a voice in that. I think you want a voice in that.
Shouldn't there be a dollar limit on what the board can approve or do without an 80%?
There is.
There is, and that's what
But
I'm
I
saying.
see money that's been spent that we never knew about.
We will elect the board.
Okay.
If I could, and great question, I'm glad you're asking it because there's probably a lot of misunderstanding. You will elect the board to maintain the community property. We do not go into debt. We don't obtain loans to maintain the community property. We use the dues that each of us pay for every lot to maintain the property. Those expenses, we are empowered by your vote of the board. When we are being asked to liquidate or get rid of assets of the community, that's beyond the board as themselves. We can't just vote and say, give it to my homestead, give it to Chief Stylemark. We can't do that. That has to be everyone who is an owner in this community. So that's why you don't get it one every week or every month. You get it when we have a major decision.
There's a
with
major
asset.
decision trying to go on right now, and we've never received anything about this major decision, what's going on.
Well,
Let me finish, please. The other thing is, there is money that's being spent on all kinds of other things. I think possibly there should be a change stating that X amount of dollars over a certain amount should also be approved by all the homeowners, not just spent by 8 or 9 people on a board. Stop, don't interrupt me. I have the floor, and I believe in Robert's rules. Excuse me.
I don't believe I've been rude to you, and I apologize if I cut you.
All right. And the other thing is, utility companies, as a right, a lot of times, many, many times, all over the country, take out leases for 50 years, 100 years, or more. So that is not extreme. This is the norm when it comes to a utility company taking out a lease on something. So, you know, maybe you need to look into what's going on in the world out there. Utility companies, if we want, water is your lifeblood. We need the water. And if he needs to lease this building or whatever to keep our water coming, to improve our water. What is your problem?
Okay, thank you for your input. Your motion to adjourn?
There is.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.